It's funny because the original recipes of these, I'd put maple syrup in the bars, but the banana and the blueberry are enough. You don't need any sweetener in the bar itself. You don't need oil. Pretty wild. I've gone back and forth on protein powder, but as long as I'm only having one serving a day and getting the rest of my protein from more whole sources like the seitan and tofu and beans and nuts, nut butters, soy milk, that I like them. It helps me hit that number. I do a lot of strenuous activity, so the protein powder is okay. Crazy day. That guy, Charlie Kirk, was assassinated yesterday. Russia flew drones over Poland. We're in the most crazy political time of my life, and it's all been crazy. Like, I was talking to my friend Dion at the beach today, and if you really think about it, there's never been a time in human history when we haven't been trying to ethnically cleanse one another or tribally cleanse, when one tribe is not trying to blot out another tribe off the face of the earth. Unfortunately, it's something in us that, well, from a liberal perspective, we would call it the disavowal of difference. From a Freudian perspective, it's the narcissism of minor differences. Some of the minor differences look really major, like if I view you to be different in such a way that is intolerable to me, that means that I can't tolerate it, so I need to destroy it. And to resist that urge to destroy what is different, to destroy the persecutory force, is very challenging. It's honestly very challenging, and it doesn't see a political side. That's the part that's so difficult, is to understand that there are hateful, resentful, vengeful forces that align themselves according to multiple ideologies. Because the point is just the difference, right? It's just that something is so different, and that certain differences or ways of being different or positions of difference have ideologies or belief systems that actively speak hatefully or organize around an idea of destroying other groups. The stronger position is actually to just see that this is what goes on, and to understand that it is emotionally charging when you feel that you're a part of a group that's targeted by another group, that you're going to be emotionally charged, that you're going to desire to destroy the people who desire to destroy you. May need a third cup of coffee today. Now, I don't have the answer to this stuff. I don't know how to end it. I barely know how to cope with it myself. But I do know that there is something fundamentally correct in trying to resist what Nietzsche called ressentiment. Re-feeling the pains over and over again. Re-victimizing yourself. Reasserting why XYZ group ought not to exist. Why you need to punish them. Why it's going to feel good. The pain is not going to go away. Persecution anxiety, unfortunately, is not going to go away. So what do? Well, you do need to find your group. You do need to find your people. But you don't find your people so that you go out and organize in and destroy others or speak hatefully of others. You do it so that you have solidarity and can protect one another and can help one another mourn when you're grieving. What about rights? What about access to care? That question, in an interesting way, is the $1 million question. Because that is the question of political organization. That is the question of, well, how do you secure access to what you think ought to be able to be accessed by everyone at a larger governmental, at a larger societal level? And that's the kind of stuff that we are arguing about constantly in human history. This is so good. I think it's just important to really resist the urge to persecute other people, no matter how hateful you find them. And then when it comes to stopping what is perceived to be egregious acts of injustice, I honestly, you know what? I do not know how to answer this question. I think at the end of the day, Gandhi was probably right about this. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. And so even something like, obviously the Holocaust needed to be stopped, but that hasn't stopped Holocausts. It stopped one after it had already gotten so far, right? That one wasn't nipped in the bud. Just because the Germans lost World War II hasn't stopped ethnic cleansing from happening around the world. Hasn't stopped tribal violence from happening around the world. Am I glad that the Germans stopped doing that? Well, yeah, but also at what cost? We had to bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So in one fell swoop, just as many people died. It's hard to see a clear moral victory here. But then I don't know what kind of education system and social welfare state would have to be in place for us to be able to have the kind of patience that is required to let people be wrong, to let people accidentally and intentionally harm us. I mean, there is a very animal urge to defend oneself in the moment. I know it. I've been there. And yeah, it's just these are very difficult questions. Very difficult questions. I'm gonna have to think more about this stuff. I mean, I think a lot about it. We are all thinking about it. I've said before, I am not a perfect political actor at all. Have my defense mechanisms and set ways of being and ways that I've been socialized. I do think there's a fundamental asymmetry between what people consider the right and the left. And that is, it is clear to me that the quote unquote left wants more people to be able to flourish. The asymmetry is that I don't feel that the left, what people on the left are doing, like, well, here, actually, let me walk it back. I do think cancel culture is bad. But then where do you draw the line with hate speech or saying, XYZ aren't people, XYZ ought to be eradicated? When people are working through their views about difficult things on gender and sexuality, I do think people should be given some space to work through those things because bodies are so intimate. And often when people are working through those ideas, they're dealing with deep unconscious drives and desires that constitute their own framework, which are too close for them to understand. That's the whole point about drives and desires and unconscious processes. They're the things right under your nose, literally like behind your nose, that you can't see because they're inside of you, right? You can't even see how your organs are functioning. You can only go off of like your state of health, the metrics from the doctor, how well you're performing at your job, your sport, and your family life, how mentally aware you are. So there's these external factors that are indicators of the internal state, but the actual internal state itself is not as easily accessible. And I say that because I don't think it is right to punish people when they're trying to understand internal states. And they do so with the incomplete kind of language that we have. And so to tell people there are only certain words they can use to describe those internal states and those emotions and those feelings, and when they're trying to describe reality or how they see the world, again, the language is incomplete. And most people are going to be struggling. So to tell somebody there's only one kind of register of speech in which they can work through these things, I do think is harmful and will backfire and has been backfiring on the left, right? It's perfectly fine if people want to experiment with new language as well. So we also shouldn't be policing the other way, right? If people want to use new pronouns or use a pronoun that is not the one that would normally be aesthetically aligned with how they're presented by others, presented to the world, how they present themselves to others in the world, that's also perfectly fine. I don't think we should necessarily castigate people who are slow with that. Well, you need patience. If somebody's going to adopt new vocabulary, but the whole concept of X not cancellation, right, is negation. Cancellation is saying X not ought not to exist. And that's harmful and violent. So being human is hard. Our language is imperfect and imprecise. And this is something that the right really does not get right and really gets wrong with the issues of gender and pronouns and things like that. There is nothing about language that is inherently conservative in the sense that each word matches up perfectly. We can make new words. There's nothing about anything in the world that makes the name that coheres with that thing native to it in an essential kind of way. That is relativist of a sort, but there are certain names that in here that have stuck longer over time. And that is how we get anything stable with which to do our measurements and communications with. So we need what I will call stability, which could be a different word if language would have evolved differently. But we do need relative stability in order to move forward with thoughts, ideas, measurements, and getting some kind of grasp on reality. Is reality hard to get a grasp on? Yeah. No wonder why so many people are trying to define what is real and have always been trying to define, like, what is real. So that's just because it's a difficult thing to do. I'm getting around to the point that I'm trying to make, which is the left goes wrong when it does cancel people and polices speech. But still, the motivations are a little bit better, which is that, hey, we just need more dignity for more people and give these people a little bit more space. It's not the same as saying white people should not have jobs, white men should not have jobs. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is just reverse racism against white men. It's really not the same, and that's a category error. People who are, that the fellow Charlie Kirk, who was just assassinated, continually made that category error. But he is right that because his views were so repugnant and so infuriating that it was easy for him to maintain calm when holding his views while other people got fired up and called him anti-trans, called him a Nazi, called him all of these names, and he would say, you're just name calling because you can't debate me, because he would get them to the point of such fury that people would lose sense of their logic, right? And as a debating tactic, that has worked out very well for the right. They view their views as just common sense, but that's because they, in a certain way, disavow essential uncertainty and unconscious processes. And I do think that we can get to a place of a little bit more patience with one another when we avow unconscious motivations, unconscious processes, knee-jerk reactions. And, you know, Freud said that actually love is not as primary as hate. Hate is actually the more primary urge. And I think if we look around, we really see that. We have knee-jerk reactions to protect ourselves, and that defense mechanism is related to hate. The narcissism of minor differences, for example, is premised on the idea that we can only love insofar as we bind ourselves together in love against another set of humans whom we hate, or ideas that we hate, right? So that love itself, binding the group that coheres, is premised upon an expulsion of the perceived different or hated group, right? So that's the and we're all doing that process. But something more open and inclusive that is more truly acknowledging of these processes would be considered on the left. Why? Because it has nuance, and in nuance there is uncertainty. And the more of us who can see one another as dealing with all of this uncertainty, just our emotions alone, right? Like, we get wrapped up in emotions. That does create the conditions for a little bit more patience with one another, and not feeling always so aggrieved and so in a need to lash out and make revenge. And this revenge culture, this idea of having enemies who we punish and destroy, honestly, that's transcendent in a bad way of any political position. And that's the thing you should really interrogate. And I'm going to bring this back to surfing right now for a second, because this is the case with all of these little etiquette errors in surfing. Oh, the person got in my way, or that guy burned me, or that guy looked at me funny, or she paddled around me. And then treating that person with the perceived slight that you felt they meted out against you, you're engaging in the same hateful thing that you perceived was done to you. So it's one of those iterative processes where, let's just say it very plainly, when you call somebody a dick, you're being a dick. When you call somebody a kook, you're being a kook. So, and I've done it before too. I'm totally guilty of this, of course. But I'm trying to catch it, right? I'm trying to be aware that that's not the best way forward. That's not what growth looks like. That doesn't make me feel good. To be filled with resentment and anger is not the way that, like, I like to. It doesn't feel good. So how do you expel it, right? What's the most appropriate way to expel it? To go online anonymously and write hateful comments in people's feeds? To call them kooks? No, that's clearly not. Maybe to write privately about how you're feeling, right? To, like, own your own emotions. This is why we have to always come back to Spinoza and to Freud and to all of these kinds of people who try to understand how we're motivated. Why are we motivated this way? And there are people who grab power, and here's the wild card, is obviously that some people have way more power than others. Other people pull levers of power in certain ways that are just mind-blowing, really. Even that people would desire that kind of power, like what that is providing for them. And that these kind of people are creating the infrastructure and institutions under which we must all comport ourselves and live our lives and go about getting the things that we need. That is mind-boggling and also frustrating and scary, because we start thinking futurally about not being able to get this for our dinner, not being able to get this for our children, not being like we're just walking out on the street and being shot, right? So, or being persecuted in other ways, like having your documents seized, being sent back to the country where you don't want to live because somebody there is trying to persecute you. Like, all of this stuff is very real. There are real reasons to be scared. And what are we scared of at the end of the day? We're scared of suffering. And we're scared of dying. But more than being scared of dying, we're scared of living a life of suffering. And I think it just behooves us to look at every single human being that way. Every single human being is scared of suffering and scared of dying, and a lot of their actions are defenses against suffering and suffering into death. And you might not like the things that come out of people's mouths, and you might find one way of life much more hateful than another. But at the end of the day, these are reaction formations. These are defenses, because people are ultimately so scared. And the person who says they aren't scared, that's probably a sign they're one of the most scared people that you know in a certain way. Yeah, I don't know who needs to hear this right now, but maybe this is, I don't know if you need a surf coach philosopher telling you this kind of stuff, but it's also okay to be scared. You just have to own it. You just have to say, I'm scared. I'm scared. This scares me. I mean, I'm scared. At this moment right now, this uptick in political violence in American life is scary. But also, to be a free thinker, free quote unquote, I don't believe in freedom again, but I do believe that people I believe in freedom from, right? I think that things are determined, not fated. But freedom from persecution while you're working out difficult things like how to be a person in the world, I think is a laudable goal, one that we have not succeeded at in human history yet. And I don't think America is a land of the free. I've never thought that America is a land of the free. And people don't want freedom. Freedom causes anxiety. People want guidelines and laws that are reasonable, right? We want limited choices that are all better than bad. And if you can just pick between 3 things that are relatively good, that's better than picking between a million things that are nebulous. That's the problem with our grocery stores. If it was just produce aisle and grains, we'd be good. We have too much stuff in there, and it's making everybody insane. Yeah. And at the end of the day, there will always be more waves. It's so funny. We're going to kill the oceans, kill our surf spots. New surf spots are going to crop up. And there will be people bombing each other, ethnically cleansing each other, and we're still somehow going to find some goddamn way to go surfing. It's all so wild. It's just all so wild. Well, there you go. That's 30 minutes of breakfast thoughts. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but that's a lot of content. So I wish you well. I do wish you well. I wish me well. And let's just keep working. Let's just keep working together. All right.